Please.
There's a lot of rumors that, or maybe wishful thinking, that China might show up to be the next good guy in these negotiations. Is that just wishful thinking, or is China maybe moving towards a leading role in these climate negotiations?
Well, it's our very strong impression from the contact we're having with the Chinese leadership that the determination in China to get a global agreement on climate change is huge and growing, and that China is determined to pursue climate policies, both the ones they have already adopted, which are very ambitious, but also to adopt even more ambitious climate policies. Will that be enough? Well, will what any of us do be enough is, of course, a question which will have to be clarified in the course of the negotiations. But I think China is a key player in the negotiations, and a very constructive player that is seeking actively an agreement to be closed in Copenhagen this year.
Please, Bob Freeze.
Similar question.
Just wait for the mic a second, Bob.
Similar question with regard to India, where we haven't heard as much, but obviously the significance of India's participation is key. Any thoughts as to how to, what the status is and how to make progress there?
Well, India, as you know, on the 30th of June last year, released its National Action Plan on Climate Change, which is essentially divided into 8 different missions. The very first one of those is solar energy. And there's going to be a major effort to move towards greater use of solar energy. The second is energy efficiency, sustainable habitats, which includes a shift in terms of transportation technology, I hope, towards much greater use of public transport, more efficient housing and structures. And there is an energy conservation law which has been in existence in India for 6 years now, and there's a Bureau of Energy Efficiency that's drawing up standards and codes and so on. All of these will be implemented, I hope. But the key thing about India is that, you know, a lot of action is really in the hands of the state governments, and that's where you need to create capacity. Merely coming up with a set of targets at the national level will not work. But I can assure you this particular government is quite concerned about climate change, and in the next few months, I'm not too sure whether that'll translate into any specific commitments by the time of Copenhagen, but in terms of action, you will see a great deal happening in India. That's my belief.
Please, over here. Tom Crane.
How do you overcome the lack of governance ability to invoke incentives and disincentives on the 180 different parties? I mean, it just seems like a really difficult process to manage. And most of the time when you are managing, you lay out a plan, and then normally people don't just say, oh, that's great, let's go with it. But management and leadership are instilled with a series of incentives and disincentives that they can therefore, or at that time, invoke to move the process. How do you overcome that?
Well, we don't. I think it's important to recognize that the world is not a place with a governance structure. We don't have that. And we have to achieve this without it. And this is coming back to the point I stressed, that if individual countries do not feel better off with an agreement than without it, they will not enter into it. There's no one who can force them, and especially not the key actors. And therefore we need to make the agreement dynamic enough, clever enough for the individual countries to want to sign in, not only because they see the problem in the magnitude as it is, but also because they know if they do not sign in, nor will their neighbor, and if they don't sign in, nor will their continent. So there's a strong incentive for the countries to actually get an agreement, because it's the only way we can address the problem adequately. There is no country, or no one country, or no subgroup of countries that can address this problem adequately without a global agreement. So there are very strong incentives for all countries fearing the consequence of an uncontrolled consumption of fossil fuel in the future and virtually a race to the bottom. And there are very serious implications for many of us if globalization is meeting a counterstrike by protective measures launched by one country, a group of countries against the others, in terms of a non-regulated fight on both access to fossil fuel and pricing of energy and all the rest that follows. So there's a lot at stake, both on the positive side and on the negative side. There's no governance, and we can only try to create a process that will create a positive dynamics for countries to actually enter into the agreement. And this is an additional reason why we should be extremely careful in the course of the process to condition our own engagement and contribution on that of the others. We need to say, this is what we can do and what we will do. And this is the means that we are applying nationally to try to achieve this. But don't make that conditional on any specific move of any specific other country, because that's going to be very difficult to achieve.
Time for a final question. Rusty Bennett over here.
Does the European Union come to the conference with any type of unified voice or negotiation posture, or is it just all countries individually?
No, we definitely come with a unified position. We have set out a very clear reduction target on the first cluster of issue. We will do in the European Union 20% reduction against 1990 levels in 2020. We'll do that regardless of an international agreement. As part of an international agreement, we will do an additional 10%. So we will do 30% reduction against 1990 levels in 2020 as part of a global deal. And by March this year, we expect our supreme body, the Council of Prime Ministers, the European Council, to adopt an ambitious package of financial and technology instruments that will be the position of the European Union in the negotiations of the enabling instruments of the second cluster. So we have a very clear and well-defined position for a very ambitious level of engagement.
That was a very important question, because indeed one of the interesting developments in recent years is that the European Union really does negotiate as a bloc, which of course means that they first have to have an internal set of negotiations to figure out what their common position will be. There has, up until the current moment, really extending well back through the Clinton administration, there's been this very strong divide between the U.S. position and the European position, with the U.S. often trying to find allies here and there, Australia, Canada, Japan, et cetera. And it's going to be very interesting to see whether that dynamic now continues under the Clinton administration, or whether we really, the Obama administration, and whether we really begin to see a new era in climate politics. I think that's something we should all look for. We're now going to do a very quick transition to our first panel. So hang on just one moment.